Today we're going to talk about strategic positioning. In a discussion of strategic positioning, it makes a lot of sense to talk about strategy and to really define this term. I think it's one of those terms like innovation or quality, and we're familiar with it, we kind of know it when we see it, but it's somewhat arguable what's the right definition. So we'll spend some time talking about that as it's related to entrepreneurship. We're also going to discuss the nature of strategic positioning and what that means in an entrepreneurial context. Lastly, we'll talk about some merits of this and why spending sufficient time doing your strategic planning is going to perhaps feel like something that's less actionable in the beginning, but it's going to save you more time and hopefully save you more money in the long run. It's all really boils down to determining what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, what you're not going to do, and that there's some fit among those activities. And we'll take a look and we'll explore some different companies, and that what works for one doesn't necessarily work for others. And there's also this element of differentiation to think about as well. And we'll talk about three key principles. One, there's the principle of something that's unique and valuable. So in the discussion of entrepreneurship innovation, there's a lot of time that should be spent on being differentiated, being different from what's in the marketplace and what you think is going to be in the marketplace. And you see companies that have success in serving few needs of many customers. Can you think of any companies that fit into that mold, where they only do one or two things, but there are a lot of people that need those things done?
Ingrex Company and DoseSpot.
Okay, so when you look at these electronic prescription companies, they do electronic prescriptions. Very narrow space. How many people have had a prescription written? Virtually everyone. So many people need it, but it's a very narrow and specific business. You see companies that may do a broad set of needs, but for only a few customers. And these are a little bit more difficult to think of. Any companies by name that come to mind that do broad needs for only a few customers?
Technicolor.
Technicolor. What do? They
make colors for movies.
Okay. So they make colors. Is that a broad need, or is that a specific or narrow need? You could argue maybe they do one thing. Now, the few customers, who are their customers?
Just big movie companies.
The movie companies, the movie studios, which there are a few. So definitely few needs. When you think of broad needs for few customers.
A consulting firm, perhaps? They do
Okay.
like a lot of different kinds of consulting, and
Okay.
only big businesses use
Okay. So it might be a consulting firm or people that specialize in, maybe it's government consulting, but maybe that means they'll do consulting on healthcare. They'll do consulting on transportation, on finance, on defense. But their customer might be the federal government and maybe the state governments. So there are only 50 or 51 clients, but they will do a broad level of analysis, a broad level of advisement for them. So this is University of Maryland company started a couple of years ago, HD Trade Services, and what they were designed in doing was recognizing that as entrepreneurs are working to source goods from overseas, you are somewhat at a disadvantage if you're going to pay someone in China to ship you 100 or 1,000 units of a product, and that product's going to arrive and be what you think it's going to be. What's the problem? You go to a website, you find a manufacturer, you go back and forth, you talk, you Skype, you fax, you email, you come to terms on a design, on a product. They can do one of these that's round and pink with purple stripes, made of glass, if that's what you want. What's the disadvantage to you as the entrepreneur of working with that firm abroad? What's the risk? Is there risk? What could go wrong?
The miscommunication, like the guy from Waiters.
Okay. There's an element of miscommunication of I wanted purple with pink stripes, but you gave me pink with purple stripes. So again, might be just an honest mistake of it doesn't look like I thought it would look.
Like time, like they're far away, so if you need it within a certain amount of time.
They're far away, so if I need something to ship on a certain date or time, to get here on a certain day of time, I'd like to kind of validate that it looks like it should look and it ships when it is supposed to ship. What other problems do you incur working with an international provider?
Shipping cost?
There's a shipping cost.
Their country may have different regulations and rules.
There's a regulation and rules.
Power in their village might shut down.
Okay. There's an element of local power or capability. So again, there's elements of the contract, the shipping cost. Again, some known factors. When do you pay them? Okay, you pay them before you receive it?
Yeah.
You sure? What's the problem with that? I will send you $1 million because I have $10 million in Nigeria and I just need $1 million to pay my banker for transferring that over. What do we call that? Fraud. So you are susceptible for fraud to give someone that you've never met, that works at a business that you've never seen, that produces your equipment or your product in a plant that you've never been to, money before you get anything. When do they want the money?
Upfront.
Before they make it. When should you want to pay them? When you get it. So there's kind of a mismatch there as well. So all of those reasons are the reason that HD Trade Services was created, and their model is that they provide an escrow system whereby you give money to them, they hold the money until the manufacturer delivers that product to you and it's accepted. So in that way you have kind of this trusted third party in them that, provided that the transaction happens as both parties agreed to, payments made on the back end. So they've got this escrow element that's held there as well. They also do video-based monitoring such that the manufacturer will go in with a webcam, will go in with even an inexpensive camera that can just capture and stream the video. And so you can essentially do a virtual inspection of your products overseas. Why would the manufacturer agree to that? That they're going to take the time to open up the box and to, do a little bit of camera work with you synchronously, so you can talk with them, they can talk with you, etc.
Because they want your money?
They want your business. It's a differentiator for them. And it's a way to get you there virtually and to build that relationship. How many people need such a thing? How many small entrepreneurs are big enough that they're able to source product from abroad, but small enough that they can't really afford the money or time to go over there and visit?
Many.
Many? Are there a lot of entrepreneurs that are sourcing abroad that have enough money to do it, but not enough money to travel to see it?
No.
Tends to be a smaller group of people, but they do a variety of things. They do the financial management, the escrow piece, the video inspection, so they're doing multiple offerings. So this would kind of fit into that. They do a breadth of services on the fulfillment side, but it's a pretty narrow profile of the entrepreneur that they're trying to serve. when you look at strategic positioning, there's this other element to think about what not to do. And we oftentimes get tempted as entrepreneurs, if we're going to start a business and we want to do consulting to individuals that are trying to start restaurants, and perhaps that's our background. Perhaps we were a restaurant manager, we've worked in restaurants, we are familiar with the industry, and we want to be a consultant for people trying to start restaurants. What happens if we're not able to find enough clients to get the revenues that we're looking for? What might we do? Yep.
Oh, you may say product for cheaper?
Okay, we can lower our price, but what do we do if we still can't get the number of restaurant clients that we want for the consulting business that we're doing, if we're focused on trying to serve people trying to start restaurants? What else could you do? What's the next closest thing you could do in your consulting?
Expand to things other than restaurants.
Expand beyond restaurants, such as?
Suppliers or
Okay. To people that do food supply, to people that are distributors and manufacturers of the food products. What else could we do? What do you think? What else could we do?
Me?
Yep. We started in restaurants, then we expand to food suppliers. Where do we go next?
You could go to. I don't actually know.
Okay. What do you think? Hotels.
Bars are kind of
Bars.
so,
Okay. What happens when we started in restaurants, but now we're going to do consulting for food suppliers and manufacturers and hotels and bars? What are we doing?
Expanding brand.
We're expanding. What do we know about hotels?
Nothing.
Nothing. What do we know about bars? Not much. So again, why do we do such things?
because you need to.
Because there's a perception that you may need to. And there's a temptation of money, if we think there's money to be made doing it. But again, if you are strategic, you would either not do it or be very careful if you were to go that route. Perhaps partner with others that have experience in those areas to go their route. But nonetheless, difficult to be all things to all people, particularly if they are not necessarily your forte, particularly if you're trying to bring expertise somewhere that you don't have the expertise in that space. And what you can do as well is distract yourself from figuring out, well, why isn't the initial product working? You kind of jump ship on that a little bit too quickly and bounce around to the next thing, and it's just kind of a pinball effect of you're just bouncing around, trying this, trying that, seeing what sticks, rather than being focused of figuring out how do I build the business that I set out to build. Now, you can do other things. If you're going to start consulting for restaurant startups, it would make sense that in time you may extend that into hotels, and you may extend that into other business lines. But it's as you've had success in one, or as you partner and added resources to give you the capacity to go in and extend your product lines. But be careful of trying to do too much at the same time, particularly if they are disconnected. So what does Amazon sell? Amazon.com. What do they sell in a word?
Everything.
Everything, you could argue. This is the timeline for how they have moved towards everything. In 1996, they sold books. And that was it. No music, no apparel, no kitchen equipment, just books. Why did they start off selling just books?
they found a market or a need.
They felt there was a market opportunity. A lot of people read books. So a big market size. A lot of money was spent on books. So a big market opportunity. What else made books well suited for e-commerce in 1996? Yep.
Sell them for a lot cheaper than the bookstores.
You could offer a lower price because you're saving the cost of the facility and the bricks and mortar and the labor, etc. So you could offer them at a sustainably lower price because your expenses should be lower.
The customer doesn't really need to like browse around. They know what book they're going to get ahead of time. And
It's a commodity in the sense of you know exactly what it is. If you're going to get a certain book of a certain title in paperback with a certain ISBN number, you know exactly what it is. And it's the same no matter where you buy it from. Now the price might be better, but the product isn't something you need to try on. You don't need to pick up two books that are identical and feel them and touch them and flip through them and taste them to see, is it the same? It's identical. You know what it is. You don't need to see it. There's one more piece that made books a great fit for Amazon in the beginning.
New and used.
They started doing only new. So it did only new. What else makes books well suited to e-commerce? Particularly in this era.
They wanted to learn about stuff? I don't know. They wanted to learn more?
What makes it well suited to e-commerce, different than going to bricks and mortar?
is it easier to ship than other things?
Shipping cost. There were companies that tried to sell furniture online in the late 90s. What's the problem when you buy a sofa online?
Shipping costs.
Your shipping costs are absorbent. There were companies, Pets.com tried to sell dog food online. What's the problem when you're buying a bag of dog food?
I mean, it typically weighs like between 20 to 30 pounds. So it's
Shipping a 20-pound bag is probably going to cost more than the food itself. But books, $10, $20, $30 price point, shipping cost $1 or $2, very easy to ship. Also in that time, there were people that were concerned about e-commerce and is it safe to buy something online? Is it safe to spend $20 with this company called Amazon that I've never heard of before?
Probably.
But for $20, people were willing to give it a go. What's the worst that could happen?
You lose $20.
You tried to buy something for $20 and it never arrived, and you lost your $20. Different than where people are buying jewelry now with Blue Nile. People buy $10,000, $20,000 diamond rings online. But again, a long time ago, when people were still somewhat fearful of credit card fraud and having money stolen from them by fake online retailers. So again, started with books, very narrow, very specific. It did one thing. Then they went to music, not digital music, but CDs. Why was CDs logical as the next?
It too was also very expensive to ship.
It was essentially brought all the same benefits of books. If you're going to get X movie made in X year, you know exactly what that is. Price point affordable, easy to ship. A lot of people watch movies. So books and music were their first offerings. As you see here, they've gone a long way since then. Some of it they've done in isolation, as in they do all of the fulfillment. Other things they do in partnership with other providers. So there are other companies. Actually, Borders.com, Borders Books and Music, Amazon ran their platform for them. I think they may do some stuff with Target now. I think Drugstore.com and some others are partners with Amazon. So in that way, you see them have a lot of partnerships that they're bringing things to you. They've allowed you and I to sell, so we can sell online through Amazon stores. So they've opened it up in a variety of ways, but it started doing one thing well, and that was books. And then as they had success, they were able to reinvest those revenues and profits into expanding in the new areas and new categories, new parts of the world, etc. So the third element that we want to talk about is this element of fit. And this is easy to stray off the tracks of when you think about product design, or even if you're thinking about doing something that's service-based, and that there's a temptation to perhaps to want to do everything. You want to have all of the forms and the features and great value and great service and top product, but the pricing, what people are willing to pay, may not align with that. And that's what we mean by fit, and that the company activities and that the strategy the company's using is something that makes sense economically, strategically, from a brand perspective. And in that way, it also helps differentiate you from competitors when you decide what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and you work not to stray from that. So for someone that's never been to a Walmart by hands, how would you tell them what a Walmart is?
Big warehouse with lots of shelves.
Okay, so it's big, it's warehouse, it's lots of shelves.
Cheap.
It's inexpensive, so you can get 1,000 Pop-Tarts for $1. So again, very inexpensive. What else? What do you tell them about the service?
The lines are always extremely long.
Okay, your lines, be prepared to wait. Be patient. The lines might get long. What about the service? What do I mean by service?
Employee service.
Employee service, customer service.
They have a guy who greets you at the door, and that's about as much help as you're going to get.
Okay, there might be a greeter at the door, and that might be as much help as you get. If you're looking at televisions, and you're looking at some comparable televisions, and you have a couple of questions about the refresh rates, and if you can plug in an Apple TV to it and how that will work, or if you can stream, if you want to put in a HD camera and run Skype across it, but you're working with a, maybe broadband, but maybe somewhat of a modest broadband connection, maybe 54 kilobytes. Are they going to be able to tell you if that's the TV for you?
Nope.
Probably not. Where do you need to go to find someone that can tell you if that's the TV you need?
Bye.
Maybe Best Buy. Maybe Best Buy.
Bang and Olufsen.
Okay. Probably a more boutique, a more specialized store. A higher end store that sells audio and video equipment exclusively. So in that way, why don't we buy all of our TVs at boutique, high-end audio video stores if that's where the service is great?
Because the price usually.
Because we might pay 10 or 20% or 30 or 40% more for something that is the same or very similar. Anybody been to Nordstrom's? Most people. Anyone never been to a Nordstrom's? No, okay, couple. Heard of Nordstrom's? Okay, so we have one. So how would you describe Nordstrom's to our friend that hasn't heard of them?
It's a store usually at malls that has
Okay, so it's a store at malls
amazing customer service.
with amazing customer service. What do you buy at this store?
High-end clothing, so you have
Okay, predominantly apparel. What do you define as high-end?
sometimes they have like $500 suits and like really.
Try $5,000 suits. So again, high label, real fashion, kind of high fashion stuff.
They have the luxury brand names there.
The luxury brand names. What's it close to?
JCPenney.
Are you sure?
Oh yeah, Bloomingdale's.
It's more of a Neiman Marcus, Bloomingdale's,
Lord and Tail.
Macy's type products, but at a different brand and a different level of service. And when you look at Nordstrom's, what else do they have that you don't see in other stores?
The customer service is
Customer service. What else? What else physically do you see?
The employees wear suits. They wear a lot of the apparel.
Okay, so they're wearing the apparel, they're dressed well.
They have like to check out. They have like an iPhone scanner.
Okay,
They have employees designated to each section.
okay.
They have like cafes.
Cafes. What else have you seen in the Nordstroms you haven't seen in other retailers?
Nordstrom racks.
What else do you hear at Nordstrom's? A piano. They typically have a baby grand piano near the center of the store by the escalators in the middle. Sometimes a violinist as well.
No, I don't.
Why do you need a baby grand piano and a violinist as you're buying suits and socks?
It creates a feeling of luxury.
It kind of creates that feeling of luxury.
High classness. Like,
You feel high class. You go somewhere high class, you feel high class. And again, for them it works. When you look at, based on surveys, so for fashion retailers, Nordstrom consistently outranks many others. And again, there are a few brands that I would expect to be here that weren't. I'm not sure if there was some minimum number of stores that fit into this. But nonetheless, we see them number one, and we see people write books about Nordstrom's customer service and what you can do in your company to deliver a level of service that a Nordstrom's has. And when you shop at a Nordstrom's, if you buy product, if you buy a suit, if you buy shoes, it's not uncommon that the salesperson that sold you that will ask for your contact information. Why will they do that? Why will they ask if you'd like to share an email or an address?
They send you like when they're having like sales or like special discounts or stuff like that.
Okay. They may send you a thank you card. They may say that, you know, as we have sales and promotions, as this designer releases their fall collection, I'd be happy to pull some things that I think you would like. I can pull them in your size. You can come in the store early. You can come in the store late. Why do they do all of this? Why do they do this personalized shopping?
Well, do you mean like the representatives themselves?
Yes.
They work on commission.
They make commission. So in that way, when you're thinking about these positions, look at what's going on with companies. Think about where opportunities are as you're developing your own ideas and moving forward with them. Be creative, be insightful, but don't get tempted to try and do too much at the same time or stray away from what it is that you had set out to do. So in summary, there are three central takeaways for you. One, in the entrepreneurial context, we'll look at strategy as the creation of a unique and valuable position. Secondly, we have to make some level of trade-offs, and in that way, you're going to have to choose what to do and what not to do, what products to do, what products not to do, and what customers to serve and which customers not to serve. Lastly, we'll talk about fit and think about fit. And so in that way, when you're thinking about today's lecture and when you're thinking about new ideas going forward, recognize that your activities need to fit together. And so this is a central theme that we'll have going forward as well.